I'm Andrew Napier. I'm the chief reporter of both the Hampshire Chronicle and the Southern Daily Echo in Winchester. The Hampshire Chronicle started in 1772. It was based then in Southampton, but within about 10 years it came up to Winchester, and for more than 200 years it was based in the High Street, in the building that is now ZZ's. We feel part of Winchester. I mean, I don't know how many older businesses there are in the city. As I said, we've come out every week since 1772. We're sitting in a building that has been a newspaper office for nearly getting on for 70 years, right in the heart of the city. Well, it's sad that we're no longer based in the building that we were in for 200 years. People take a paper like the Chronicle for granted. It's there, and they either choose to buy it or they don't choose to buy it. But I think they'd be interested to know that we've never missed an edition. We've never failed to come out. Blizzards, wars, strikes, COVID-19, we're there.
My name's Douglas Barnes. I'm one of the founders of the shop. We started in 1991. The thing about the shop is we are different from most retail outlets. Most towns used to have a bookshop like this in, but now that's very rare. And a lot of people come in and they find it an interesting experience. Some don't quite understand how it works. You can see that. Others come in and think we're a museum. You can see that. And others just find it an amazing new experience for them.
My name is Daryl Dipper. I'm currently at Carter Marsh Antique Clocks and Watches in Winchester. The business opened in 1947, and I was fortunate enough to join the company in 1980. As a school leaver in Winchester, it was a job that I always wanted to do, and found myself answering an advert, and 40 years later, here I am, still here. The shop originally opened in 1947 and was opened by a man called Geoffrey Bell. Geoffrey Bell, leaving the army in the late 1940s, didn't really know what to do with himself. He was an engineer in the army, and he took with him some colleagues that he had been in the army with, decided that clocks would be a good, interesting thing to get into because he was a mechanic and an engineer. He opened the shop in Winchester in 1947, started selling and repairing clocks. His first apprentice was a man called Gerald Marsh, who joined the company in 1950. Gerald was then 15 years of age. And in 1971, when Geoffrey Bell retired, Gerald Marsh took the company over and ran it from 1971 until 2014.
Winchester's unusual though because it was the capital of England for hundreds of years before Alfred's descendants kind of moved up to London. But it's quite a small place, but with loads of history and with lots of important things in it, like the county council and like the law courts. I mean, the reason there are law courts in Winchester are because basically the Anglo-Saxons had it as their capital 1300 years ago. So history's never passed in Winchester. Winchester is history, and history is Winchester. There's been lots and lots of stories. The Twyford Down M3 going through the hill, and the environmental battle for about 18 months, that was memorable. We had a colourful MP called John Brown, who anyone under 40 won't remember, but he kept us in stories. The story that in a way wasn't related to Winchester, although the trial was at Winchester, was the Rosemary West trial. I don't know if you're too young to remember, but she was a serial killer with her husband, Fred West. They killed about 25 people in Gloucester, and the trial was held at Winchester. And I don't think I'm exaggerating to say there was probably 400 journalists covering it from everywhere. One of the things about Winchester, and I've written about it, it's full of little tribes. You've got the art school students, you've got all the lawyers from the Crown Court. They've gone now, but back in the 80s and 90s there was literally a tribe of punks who were called the Buttercross punks because they used to hang out at the Buttercross. You've got the cathedral community. You've got Winchester College, you know, this huge private school, literally 100 yards from the centre of the city. And when you know the city, you see all these tribes, and we all get along. Many of the skills are the same, you know, whether you're writing for a newspaper or digital. There are certain skills that are becoming redundant. One of them is writing to length. Writing a story in a newspaper, you may have a space for 400 words. So it's no good you turning up with 200 words or writing 600 words. It doesn't matter digitally because it can just go on. But in a newspaper, you have to have that skill to compress and to distill stuff down. The Chronicle, for instance, is still going to be around for quite a while. It has a lot of loyal readers. But I'm not daft enough to tell you, oh yes, newspapers will always survive. How many people under the age of 40 buy newspapers? You don't, do you? When was the last time you bought a newspaper? Probably never. But if you've got the habit and it's in your blood, you buy them. I will buy newspapers. So we're not talking about newspapers disappearing tomorrow or next year or next decade, but probably at some point in 20 or 30 years. But I think people always like handling things that feel nice. They predicted the end of books a few years ago. Do you remember? E-books. Who wants to read a book on a screen? You actually want the physical thing. The touch, and you can smell it, it's a thing, isn't it? And newspapers are sort of the same as that. But the key thing is, will there be hundreds and hundreds of newspapers in 30 years' time? No, clearly not. But there will still be journalism, and there will still be local journalism, because we have certain skills to tell stories that are fair, accurate, balanced. I know some people are going to say, are you sure? But that's the truth. Citizen journalism, people say, oh, anyone can do it. No, they can't, Lots of people can, but most people can't.
I was always interested in books, and I had the good fortune to meet a local character, well known, Michael Green, who was one of the founders of the shop. And he said, well, why don't you come in and start a bookshop? This place is empty, it's been empty for a number of years, and let's see what happens. That was, as I said, in 1991, and I think initially there was about 2.5 years on the lease that we took over, and I thought, well, if it doesn't work out, that's only 2.5 years. And here we are 29 years later, still going strong. We acquire our books through various ways. People, it's from the public who offer them to us. People moving house, want to clear out, or relatives passed away. They have a large number of books they want to dispose of. Specialist auctions, but fortunately, most people want to come in and just buy a book. They're not necessarily collectors or anything like that. The thing that really excites me are the books that sort of have association. I remember I had a book on the life of Napoleon in exile on St. Helena, and the book had its previous owner name written there, Basil Jackson. At the foot of the page, the owner had made pencil notes. So where in the text it said, His Excellency said Napoleon wanted to do this or that, at the foot of the page in pencil notes was, I did not hear this, and I don't think this happened at all. BJ, Basil Jackson. I thought, well, this is strange. What's this? And then I looked in the index, and there was a Lieutenant Basil Jackson who was on guard at Longwood House. So this guy, whose book it was an actual eyewitness to the captivity of Napoleon, and had made pencil commentary on the book and the claims made by various people in the book. The thing with digital and e-sales and so on, if you're, especially with books, if you're looking to, you have to have a specific book in mind and then go on, look for it, order it. With a shop like ours, people come in, say, looking for a book on, I don't know, cake making, and go out with a book on how to build your own spacecraft because it's caught their eye, and they say, oh, that's interesting about it. Now, you can't do that online. Well, you can, but it requires hours of just poring through lists and lists of books, and no one's going to do that because the online thing encourages speed and fastness, and people expect immediate results, and it's not a browsing medium, whereas bookshop very much is. Yes, people come in for specific things, but they also look around and pick up something and say, oh, that's interesting, I'll buy that.
I always enjoyed mechanics. Mechanics were always an exciting and interesting thing for me. My school life, really a lot of what I did were within mechanics and woodwork and engineering, which were always my favourite subjects. I like to tinker with engines, from motors to motorcycles and bits and pieces on cars. And clocks were just a sort of progression, far more complex than most people think of, when you consider as well that some 300, 400 years ago, they were designing, building these wonderful things that are still running today. It's quite exciting, and I still get very excited by that. But they don't have to be that old. I just find the whole issue really quite exciting. Winchester, for us, I mean, it's a fabulous town. The shop and showroom have been here for such a long time. I suspect, to other people, have become part of the fabric. It never ceases to surprise me, though, how somebody will come in one Saturday for either a small watch repair or perhaps a battery change or a watch strap, because we do pretty much everything. And they will say something like, I've lived in Winchester for 30 years and I didn't know you were here. So I think of that as they don't know we're here because they don't need us. When perhaps you need us, that's when you actually know we're here. What I think we offer is probably something that not many other people do. We do all forms of cabinet making, from long cases to table clocks, wall clocks and barometers, to the restoration again of long cases, table clocks, very early table clocks and tabernacle clocks. There is little that we can't do. We have some highly skilled people who can do anything from restoring dials to remaking parts for mechanical clocks, which actually includes watches. We've got some very clever people who work for us who repair watches, and there is little that we found over the years that they can't do.
My name's Paul Spencer. I'm the Executive Director of Winchester Business Improvement District. It's one of the reasons we're really pleased to support Heritage Open Days. It's an opportunity to celebrate some of the amazing buildings and architecture we have in the city, some of the amazing heritage stories we have. But it's a chance to shine a light not just on heritage and culture and things happening in the city and our history, but also some of those businesses as well, by them getting involved in the programme of events.
I think some of the interesting parts of Winchester are for instance, when you walk up the high street and look up, and you see in the architecture the clues to the past, like old names of some of the shops used to be a pub and things like that. And if you look around, there are plenty of clues to show how Winchester's evolved.
I mean, in many ways, Winchester hasn't changed at all. It changes in superficial ways, but fundamentally it's the same as it was when I came here 30 years ago. But places never stay the same, they always change, they're always dynamic. And Winchester's exactly like that.